The night air clung to my skin, heavy with the scent of approaching rain, as Adrian's driver navigated through the glittering downtown streets. I smoothed my hands over the silky material of my dress, midnight blue, purchased just yesterday from a boutique I could never have afforded before him. The receipt had been discreetly removed before the bag was handed to me, but I'd caught a glimpse of the price tag earlier. 4 digits. More than my former monthly rent. You're quiet tonight, Adrian murmured beside me, his voice like velvet wrapped around steel. I turned to face him, my heart stuttering as it always did when his attention landed fully on me. 6 weeks of knowing him hadn't dulled that effect. Just admiring the view, I lied, offering a smile I hoped appeared genuine. Adrian Moretti studied me with those penetrating dark eyes that seemed to strip away pretense and peer straight into the corners of my mind I tried to keep private. At 34, he carried himself with the confidence of a man who had never been denied anything. His charcoal suit was impeccably tailored, not a single crease visible despite having spent the entire day in meetings. A thin scar cut through his right eyebrow, the only imperfection on his otherwise flawless face, somehow making him more beautiful rather than less. He reached across the leather seat and took my hand, his thumb tracing slow circles against my palm. "Liar," he said, but his lips curled into a small smile. "Tell me what's really on your mind, Ellie." I swallowed. How could I explain the constant sense of vertigo that accompanied being with him? 6 weeks ago, I'd been Eleanor Hayes, 26-year-old waitress with an art history degree and mounting student debt. Now I was... what? His girlfriend? His possession? The distinction sometimes blurred in ways that both thrilled and terrified me. "I'm just not used to places like where we're going," I admitted. "The reviews said it's impossible to get reservations less than 6 months in advance." Adrian's smile widened, revealing perfect white teeth. "Nothing is impossible for me, Tesoro." I believed him. In the short time I'd known him, I'd watched doors open, people scramble to accommodate his every whim. No one ever said no to Adrian Moretti, including me. The car slowed to a stop outside Luminescence, the newest and most exclusive restaurant in the city. Through the tinted windows, I could see people gathered on the sidewalk, likely hoping for a last-minute cancellation. The driver, Marco, a mountain of a man who doubled as Adrian's bodyguard, stepped out first, scanning the area before opening Adrian's door. "Wait," Adrian instructed, holding my wrist when I moved to follow him. His eyes roamed over my face, intense and possessive. "You look beautiful tonight. Everyone will stare." He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his fingertips lingering against my skin. "But remember who you're with." It wasn't a compliment, but a claim of ownership, spoken with such casual certainty that a shiver ran down my spine. I nodded, unable to form words under the weight of his gaze. A moment later, we stepped into the night air, Adrian's hand settling against the small of my back, protective, possessive. As he guided me toward the entrance, Marco followed a few steps behind, his presence a constant reminder that we were never truly alone. The maitre d's eyes widened in recognition as we approached. "Mr. Moretti," he said, practically bowing. "We're honored to have you with us this evening. Your table is ready." No checking of reservations, no mention of the line of waiting patrons. We were simply escorted through the dim restaurant, past tables of diners who glanced up as we passed. I felt their stares like physical touches against my skin, curiosity, envy, and something else. Fear? Did they know who walked among them, or did they simply recognize the aura of power that surrounded Adrian like a force field? Our table was positioned in a secluded corner with a view of both the entire restaurant and the twinkling city skyline beyond floor-to-ceiling windows. A bottle of champagne already waited in an ice bucket beside the table. "Perfect," Adrian said, though his tone suggested anything less would have been unacceptable. He pulled out my chair himself, his fingers brushing against my shoulders as I sat, a touch that sent electricity racing across my skin despite its innocence. "Your regular server is on maternity leave," the maitre d' said, his voice carrying a slight tremor, "but I've assigned our finest to attend to you tonight." Adrian merely nodded, dismissing the man with a flick of his hand as he took his own seat. Marco positioned himself at a nearby table, alone but watchful, his back to the wall and his gaze constantly sweeping the room. "You should try the champagne," Adrian said, nodding toward my untouched glass. "It's from a small vineyard in France. They produce fewer than 1,000 bottles each year." I took a sip, the bubbles dancing across my tongue. "It's delicious," I said, though I lacked the refined palate to truly appreciate its presumably astronomical cost. Adrian smiled, satisfied, and reached across the table to take my hand again. His thumb caressed the inside of my wrist, tracing the delicate blue veins there with almost scientific curiosity. "I want to take you to France," he said suddenly. "Perhaps next month. There's a chateau I think you would love." My heart fluttered in my chest. "I don't have a passport," I admitted, embarrassed by this evidence of how different our worlds were. "That can be arranged." He waved away my concern as if acquiring official government documentation were as simple as ordering takeout. And for him, maybe it was. A waiter approached our table, carrying menus bound in soft leather. "Good evening," he began, his voice professional but warm. "I'll be your server tonight. May I tell you about our specials?" Adrian nodded without looking at the man, his attention still focused entirely on me. As the waiter described elaborate dishes featuring ingredients I couldn't pronounce, I glanced up to thank him and froze. Standing several tables away, staring directly at us, was a woman with long dark hair and a heavily pregnant belly. She wore a black uniform dress, modified to accommodate her condition, and her face had gone completely pale. Even from this distance, I could see her hands trembling as she clutched a serving tray. Time seemed to slow as her gaze locked with mine. In her eyes, I saw recognition, followed by confusion, and then something that looked remarkably like fear. Before I could process what was happening, she turned abruptly and disappeared through a door marked "Staff Only." "Ellie?" Adrian's voice pulled me back to our table. "Is something wrong?" I blinked, trying to gather my thoughts. "No," I said automatically. "Everything's fine. I just thought I saw someone I knew." His eyes narrowed slightly, following the path of my gaze to the now empty spot where the pregnant woman had stood. For a brief moment, his expression hardened into something dangerous, a glimpse of what lurked beneath the polished surface, before smoothing back into pleasant interest. "An old friend?" he asked lightly, but something in his tone suggested the question carried more weight than it appeared. "Probably just someone who looked familiar," I said, forcing a smile. "The lighting in here is playing tricks on me." Adrian studied me for a beat longer than comfortable before nodding. "Choose whatever you'd like," he said, gesturing toward the menu. "The chef here trained in Paris. His seafood is exceptional." I tried to focus on the elaborate descriptions, but my mind kept returning to the pregnant server's face, to the flash of recognition in her eyes when she saw me. Not me, I realized suddenly. She hadn't been looking at me at all. She'd been looking at Adrian. "I think I'll have the scallops," I decided, choosing at random. Adrian smiled approvingly. "Excellent choice. We'll also have the tuna tartare to start." He closed his menu with an air of finality, and the waiter, who had been hovering at a respectful distance, stepped forward to collect them. "Very good, sir. And would you like to select a wine to accompany your meal?" "The Montrachet," Adrian replied without hesitation. "The 2015. "An excellent choice, sir." The waiter departed swiftly, leaving us alone again. Adrian's phone vibrated on the table. He glanced at it briefly, his expression hardening for just a moment before he silenced it and returned his attention to me. "Apologies, Tesoro. Business never sleeps." I nodded, used to these interruptions. Adrian never discussed his business with me, a deliberate omission we both pretended not to notice. I'd pieced together enough to understand that he oversaw a vast network of enterprises, some legitimate, others less so. The newspapers occasionally mentioned the Moretti family in carefully worded articles about alleged connections and suspected interests. I never asked questions. Questions felt dangerous in ways I couldn't fully articulate. "Tell me about your day," Adrian said, his tone making it more command than question. I took another sip of champagne, letting the alcohol warm my blood. "I visited that gallery you mentioned in Westside, the one with the emerging artists exhibition." This was safe territory. Adrian enjoyed my passion for art, seemed amused by my academic knowledge of a world he navigated solely through the lens of investment and acquisition. "And?" he prompted, genuine interest softening his features. "There was a sculptor there, Mira Santos, whose work was extraordinary. She uses reclaimed metal to create these delicate, almost weightless-looking pieces that—" I broke off, as movement caught my eye. The pregnant server had emerged from the back again, carrying plates to a table across the room. She kept her head down, her body angled away from us, but I could see tension in every line of her posture. Adrian noticed my distraction and turned slightly in his chair. For several heartbeats, he remained perfectly still as his gaze landed on the pregnant woman. I watched a muscle tick in his jaw, his knuckles whitening around his champagne flute. "Adrian?" I ventured cautiously. He turned back to me, his expression unreadable. "Continue about the exhibition, Tesoro. It sounds fascinating." But the warmth had vanished from his voice, replaced by something cool and distant. I stumbled through a description of the artwork I'd seen, increasingly aware that Adrian was no longer listening. His attention remained fixed somewhere over my shoulder, his eyes tracking movement through the restaurant, while maintaining the appearance of focus on our conversation. The waiter returned with our appetizer, setting the artfully arranged tuna tartare between us. "Your wine will be out momentarily," he assured us before departing again. Adrian pushed the plate toward me. "Try it," he encouraged, though his smile didn't reach his eyes. I took a small bite, the flavors exploding across my tongue. Rich, complex, perfect. But my appetite had vanished. Something was wrong. The air between us had changed, charged with a tension I didn't understand. "Is everything okay?" I finally asked, unable to maintain the pretense any longer. Adrian's eyes snapped back to mine, suddenly intense. "Why wouldn't it be? You seem distracted." His lips curved into a smile that sent a chill down my spine. "I'm simply admiring how beautiful you look tonight." His hand covered mine on the table, his grip just tight enough to be uncomfortable. "Have I told you how much I enjoy having you on my arm? How everyone wonders what I see in you?" The words were a compliment wrapped around an insult, delivered with such casual cruelty that I flinched. This was a side of Adrian I'd glimpsed only in fragments, the cold calculation behind his charm, the streak of meanness that flashed like lightning before disappearing behind clouds. "I'm sorry if I began, but he cut me off. "Don't apologize," he said, his tone softening as he lifted my hand to his lips. "I didn't mean to upset you. I've had a trying day." Relief washed over me, followed immediately by shame at how quickly I'd accepted his non-apology. This was the pattern we'd fallen into. Moments of tension dissolved by his charm, warning signs ignored in favor of the intoxicating feeling of being wanted by him. The waiter approached again, this time carrying a bottle of wine with a reverence usually reserved for religious artifacts. As he presented it to Adrian, I noticed the pregnant server passing nearby, carrying a tray of desserts. Her gaze flickered toward our table, and for a brief moment, our eyes met. In that instant, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A silent warning, a desperate plea. Then she was gone again, disappearing into the flow of the restaurant. Adrian's phone vibrated again. This time he checked it with a frown, then stood abruptly. "Excuse me for a moment," he said. "I need to make a call." I nodded, watching as he strode toward the restaurant's entrance, Marco detaching from his table to follow at a discreet distance. The moment Adrian was out of sight, I felt myself exhale, only then realizing I'd been holding my breath. The waiter poured wine into my glass with practiced precision. "Is everything to your satisfaction, miss?" "Yes, thank you," I said automatically. He hesitated, glancing over his shoulder before leaning slightly closer. "She asked me to give you this," he whispered, sliding a folded napkin beside my plate. Before I could respond, he straightened and walked away, his expression betraying nothing. My heart hammered against my ribs as I stared at the folded napkin. With trembling fingers, I opened it under the table, out of sight of Marco's watchful gaze. In hastily scrawled letters, "Get out while you can. He's dangerous. Room 4 in the back. Please." I crumpled the napkin in my fist, pulse racing. The pregnant woman, Adrian's ex-wife, wanted to speak with me. Every instinct screamed that this was a terrible idea, that Adrian would be furious if he discovered me talking to her, but beneath the fear was curiosity. A desperate need to understand the world I'd stumbled into. Adrian would be back any moment. I had seconds to decide. "Excuse me," I said to a passing server. "Could you point me to the restroom?" The woman smiled and gestured toward a hallway on the far side of the restaurant. "Through there, first door on your right." I stood, clutching my small purse, and walked as naturally as I could manage toward the indicated hallway. Once out of sight of our table, I quickened my pace, heart pounding in my ears. The restroom door was indeed on the right, but I continued past it, scanning door numbers until I found room 4. A small storage area filled with extra linens and table settings. The pregnant woman stood inside, her hands cradling her swollen belly protectively. Up close, I could see that she was beautiful, with high cheekbones and full lips currently pressed into a thin, worried line. "You came," she breathed, relief evident in her voice. "We don't have much time." "Who are you?" I demanded, though I already suspected the answer. "Sophia," she replied. "Sophia Moretti. I was Adrian's wife until 8 months ago." Her hand moved in small circles over her rounded stomach. "This is his child." The words hit me like a physical blow. Adrian had never mentioned an ex-wife, let alone a pregnant one. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you look kind," she said simply. "And because you deserve to know what kind of man you're with before it's too late." Her eyes, dark and haunted, searched mine. "How long have you been with him?" 6 weeks, I admitted, the brevity of our relationship suddenly stark in my mind. Sophia nodded, unsurprised. "It's always the same pattern. The whirlwind romance, the expensive gifts, the promises. He makes you feel special, chosen, like you're the only woman who's ever truly understood him." Each word struck with painful accuracy. I wanted to deny it, to defend what Adrian and I shared as something unique and real. But doubt had already taken root. "Why did you leave him?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Sophia's expression darkened. "I didn't. He discarded me when I became inconvenient." Her hand protectively covered her belly again. "Adrian doesn't tolerate disloyalty, real or imagined, and he never ever lets go of what he considers his." My mouth went dry. "What do you mean by discarded?" Sophia's eyes darted to the door, then back to me. "I found out things about his business, things he didn't want me to know. When I confronted him," she shook her head, a small, bitter smile twisting her lips. "Let's just say Adrian doesn't appreciate curiosity in his women. He divorced me immediately, cut me off completely. I was lucky to find this job. The storage room suddenly felt too small, the air too thin. If he's so dangerous, why are you still in the city? Why risk talking to me?" "I tried to leave," she whispered, her voice cracking. "But his men are everywhere. I made it to the bus station once, just once. Marco was waiting for me." Her hands trembled as she brushed hair from her face. "Adrian doesn't want me, but he won't let me go either. Not with his child." I thought of the possessive way Adrian touched me, the subtle threats woven through his compliments, the bodyguards who followed us everywhere under the guise of protection. Were they actually my jailers? "Listen to me," Sophia continued urgently. "While you still can, while he still thinks you're just a diversion, get away. Change your name. Move across the country. Don't tell anyone where you're going, not even family." The desperation in her eyes terrified me more than her words. This wasn't jealousy or spite. This was genuine fear. "I don't understand," I said, though understanding was beginning to dawn, cold and unwelcome. "If he divorced you, Eleanor..." She grabbed my wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. "In Adrian's world, people are possessions. They don't get to make choices. They don't get to leave. The only reason you have any freedom right now is because he hasn't fully decided you're his yet." A chill ran down my spine as I recalled the way Adrian had introduced me to his associates, always with a hand at the small of my back, always with that proprietary gleam in his eye. How he'd moved my things into his penthouse after just 3 weeks. How he tracked my movements through gifts of a new phone, a car with a driver, golden handcuffs, I realized. I'd been so dazzled by the luxury that I hadn't noticed the restraints tightening around my wrists. I need to get back, I said, suddenly aware of how long I'd been gone. He'll be looking for me. Sophia released my arm, nodding in understanding. Be careful. Don't let him see that anything has changed. She pressed a small folded paper into my palm. My number. Memorize it, then destroy this. If you decide to leave, call me first. I might be able to help. I slipped the paper into my bra, my hands shaking. Why would you help me? You don't even know me. Because I was you once. And she placed a protective hand over her belly. And because no one helped me when I needed it most. A noise in the hallway made us both freeze. Footsteps approached, then passed the door without stopping. Go, Sophia urged, her voice barely audible. And remember, not a word, not a hint. He sees everything. I slipped out of the storage room and hurried to the bathroom, locking myself in a stall. My reflection in the small mirror on the door looked alien, flushed cheeks, wide eyes. The expensive diamond earrings Adrian had given me last week glittering obscenely against my pale skin. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to compose myself. By the time I returned to our table, Adrian was already seated, his dark eyes tracking my movement across the restaurant. He didn't smile. You were gone a long time, he observed as I slid back into my chair. I forced myself to meet his gaze, praying my face wouldn't betray me. There was a line for the restroom. Adrian studied me, his expression unreadable. For a terrible moment, I thought he knew, that he could somehow read Sophia's warning in my eyes, sense the phone number burning against my skin beneath my dress. Your scallops arrived, he said finally, gesturing to my plate. They're getting cold. Relief made my knees weak. I picked up my fork, though my appetite had completely vanished. They look delicious. Eat. He commanded softly, the single word carrying the weight of an order. I took a bite, the perfectly cooked scallop turning to ash in my mouth. My mind raced, replaying every moment of the past 6 weeks through the lens of Sophia's warning. The coincidental meeting at the gallery where I worked part-time, had it been planned? The whirlwind romance that followed, a calculated seduction. The way he'd isolated me from friends, monopolized my time until my world had narrowed to just him. Had I walked willingly into my own cage? Is something wrong with your food? Adrian asked, his tone mild but his eyes sharp. No, it's perfect, I replied, taking another bite to prove it. I'm just not very hungry tonight. His gaze softened slightly. You hardly ate anything today. That's not healthy, Tesoro. The endearment made my skin crawl now, tainted by new knowledge. How could he keep such close tabs on my eating habits? I'd spent most of the day alone in his penthouse while he attended meetings, unless I hadn't been alone at all. I had a late lunch, I lied, the first of what would need to be many if Sophia was right. Adrian twirled pasta around his fork with elegant precision. With whom? The question caught me off guard, casual in delivery but pointed in intent. No one, I said quickly. I ordered delivery. Ah, he nodded, seemingly satisfied. What did you have? It was a test, I realized with growing unease, a way to verify my story. Thai, I answered, remembering a menu I'd seen in his kitchen drawer from that place on 3rd Street. Adrian smiled, the tension draining from his shoulders. Their drunken noodles are exceptional, aren't they? I nodded, relieved to have passed his impromptu interrogation. The best in the city. He reached across the table to take my hand, his thumb caressing my knuckles in that possessive way I'd once found thrilling. Now it felt like the gentle stroke of a predator, soothing its prey before the kill. I have to fly to Chicago tomorrow, he said, watching my reaction carefully. Just for 2 days. Business that can't wait. Oh, I managed, unsure whether to feel relieved at the reprieve or terrified at what this might mean. Will Marco be going with you? He will, Adrian confirmed. But don't worry, Tesoro. Anthony will look after you while I'm gone. Anthony, Marco's equally intimidating colleague who sometimes drove Adrian's second car. Not freedom then, just a change of jailer. That's not necessary, I said, trying to keep my tone light. I'll be fine on my own for 2 days. Adrian's smile didn't reach his eyes. I insist. The city can be dangerous for a beautiful woman alone. His fingers tightened almost imperceptibly around mine. Besides, I'd worry if I didn't know you were safe. Translation: I don't trust you to be unsupervised. The realization sent ice through my veins. That's very thoughtful, I murmured, lowering my eyes to hide the fear I knew must be visible there. The rest of the meal passed in a blur. I pushed food around my plate, laughed at Adrian's remarks, and tried to behave exactly as I would have before my conversation with Sophia. All the while, my mind raced, formulating and discarding plans. Could I slip away while he was in Chicago? Would 2 days be enough head start? Where would I go? I didn't see Sophia again. Perhaps she was avoiding our section deliberately, or maybe Adrian had arranged for her removal through some unseen communication with the staff. Nothing would surprise me anymore. As we prepared to leave, Adrian helped me into my coat, his hands lingering on my shoulders. He bent to whisper in my ear, his breath warm against my skin. "You're unusually quiet tonight, Ellie. What's going on in that beautiful head of yours?" I turned to face him, summoning every ounce of acting ability I possessed. "Just thinking about how much I'll miss you while you're in Chicago," I said, reaching up to touch his face in a gesture of affection I'd performed countless times before. Something flickered in his eyes, doubt, suspicion. I couldn't tell which. Before his expression softened into a satisfied smile. "I'll miss you too, Tesoro, but I'll call you every hour, and I'll be back before you know it." The drive back to his penthouse was silent. My hand clasped firmly in his. I leaned my head against the cool window, watching the city lights blur into streaks of color as we sped through the night. Just weeks ago, I'd felt like Cinderella whisked away from my mundane life into a fairy tale. Now I understood I wasn't the princess in this story, but the prisoner in the tower. In the elevator ascending to Adrian's penthouse, he pulled me against him, his lips finding mine in a demanding kiss that brooked no resistance. I responded automatically, my body betraying me with its familiar response to his touch even as my mind recoiled. "I have a gift for you," he murmured against my neck as the elevator doors opened directly into his foyer. "Wait here." I stood frozen in place, my eyes darting to the elevator, my only escape route, as Adrian disappeared into his office. Would the private elevator even work without his key card? Was there enough time to "Close your eyes," he called, his footsteps approaching. I obeyed, my heart hammering against my ribs. I felt him move behind me, something cool and heavy settling against my collarbone. "You can look now." I opened my eyes to find a diamond necklace gleaming against my skin, the stones catching light from every angle. It must have cost more than I'd earned in the past 5 years combined. "Adrian," I breathed, my fingers hovering over the extravagant gift. "It's too much." "Nothing is too much for you," he replied, turning me to face him. His eyes were dark with an emotion I couldn't name. Possession, obsession, something deeper and more disturbing. "Do you like it?" "It's beautiful," I said honestly. "But why? It's not my birthday or any special occasion." Adrian's smile was enigmatic. "Does a man need a reason to spoil the woman he adores?" The word adores hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. Not loves. Adrian had never used that word. Love implied equality, partnership. Adoration was what one felt for a prized possession. His phone vibrated in his pocket. He glanced at it with a frown. "I need to take this. Make yourself comfortable. I won't be long." As he disappeared back into his office, I moved to the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city. From the 47th floor, everything below looked small, inconsequential. The people moving along the streets were mere dots, their lives and concerns invisible from this height. Was that how Adrian saw the world? As a collection of miniatures he could manipulate at will? My fingers went to the diamond necklace, tracing its intricate pattern against my skin. Another beautiful restraint, another way to mark me as his. With sudden clarity, I knew I couldn't stay. Sophia's warning echoed in my mind, amplified by everything I'd observed tonight, the possessiveness, the constant surveillance, the subtle tests and threats. This wasn't love or even infatuation. It was ownership. Adrian's Chicago trip was my chance, perhaps my only chance, to escape before the golden cage closed completely around me. My gaze drifted to his closed office door, behind which he conducted his mysterious business. What exactly had Sophia discovered that had made him discard her so abruptly? And what would he do to me if he discovered my plans to leave? The diamond necklace felt suddenly heavy, constricting. With trembling fingers, I unclasped it and placed it on the marble coffee table, the stones glittering innocently in the low light. 2 days. I had 2 days to disappear. Morning light streamed through the bedroom windows, casting long shadows across Adrian's sleeping form. I'd barely slept, my mind racing with escape plans and worst-case scenarios. Now, watching his chest rise and fall in the peaceful rhythm of deep sleep, I almost managed to convince myself that I was overreacting. In repose, he looked almost vulnerable, the hard edges of his personality softened by unconsciousness. Then his phone vibrated on the nightstand, and his eyes snapped open instantly, alert, calculating, cold. No drowsy transition, no moment of confusion, just the immediate predatory awareness I'd come to recognize as his natural state. "Good morning," I murmured, playing my part. Adrian's expression warmed as he registered my presence. He reached out to trace my cheekbone with his fingertips. "You're awake early, Tesoro." "Couldn't sleep," I admitted truthfully. "Thinking about you leaving." His lips curved into a satisfied smile as he checked his phone. "It's only 2 days. I'll be back before you have time to miss me." He set the phone down and pulled me against him, his body hard and insistent against mine. "Though perhaps I should give you something to remember me by." Later, as the shower steam filled the bathroom, I leaned against the marble wall and let hot water sluice over my skin, wishing it could wash away the confusion I felt. Even now, even knowing what I did, my body had responded to Adrian's touch with embarrassing eagerness. How could I still want a man I now feared? I stepped out of the shower to find him already dressed in one of his impeccable suits, a steaming cup of coffee in his hand. "Your coffee is on the nightstand," he said, watching as I wrapped myself in a plush towel. "I've instructed Anthony to take you shopping today. Buy whatever catches your eye," another leash disguised as generosity. "That's sweet, but I don't need anything." Adrian's expression hardened slightly. "I insist. Besides, you'll need something appropriate for the charity gala next week." He approached, adjusting his platinum cufflinks. "I want everyone to see how beautiful my Ellie is." My Ellie. Not a woman he was dating, but a possession he owned. How had I not heard it before? "What time is your flight?" I asked, moving toward the closet to select my clothes, desperate for some physical space between us. "Noon," he replied, his eyes tracking my movements. "Marco will drive me to the airport after my meeting with the Castellano group." A slight frown creased his forehead. "You didn't wear the necklace to bed." I froze, my heart skipping a beat. "I didn't want to damage it while I slept," I explained, forcing my voice to remain steady. "It's too beautiful to risk breaking." Adrian studied me for a long moment, his dark eyes unreadable. "I had it made specifically for you," he said finally. "The diamonds match the exact color of your eyes when you laugh." The casual observation sent a chill down my spine. How long had he been watching me before our accidental meeting? How many details had he cataloged, analyzed, used to design the perfect trap? "I'll wear it today," I promised, hating myself for the placating tone I couldn't keep from my voice. He smiled, seemingly satisfied, and moved toward the door. "I need to handle some business before I leave. Join me for breakfast in 30 minutes. Once alone, I dressed quickly in jeans and a simple blouse. Unremarkable clothes that wouldn't draw attention. Today needed to appear completely normal while I set my escape in motion. I clasped the diamond necklace around my throat, the weight of it a constant reminder of what was at stake. In the kitchen, Adrian's housekeeper had prepared an elaborate breakfast. He sat at the head of the table, simultaneously eating and typing on his laptop. "Sit," he said without looking up. "Eat something substantial. You barely touched your dinner last night." I took a slice of toast and some fruit, my stomach too knotted with anxiety to handle anything more. "What time should I expect Anthony?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "He'll be here at 10, Adrian replied, his attention still on his screen. Use the black credit card for your purchases. Don't worry about the limit, because there wasn't one. Because money was just another tool in his arsenal of control. Thank you, I said meekly. Adrian closed his laptop and finally looked at me, his gaze lingering on the necklace at my throat. Satisfaction flickered across his features. I've arranged for dinner to be delivered at 7. Anthony will escort you home by then. Home. As if this gilded cage was my home rather than his territory. That sounds perfect, I lied. His phone rang, and he frowned at the screen before standing. I need to take this in my office. I'll be a few minutes. The moment he disappeared down the hallway, I moved quickly to the junk drawer in the kitchen where he kept spare keys. I found what I was looking for, the extra key card for the private elevator, and slipped it into my pocket, one obstacle down. By the time Adrian returned, I was calmly sipping my coffee, the picture of contentment. I'm afraid I need to leave earlier than expected, he said, gathering his things. Some complications with the Chicago situation. My pulse quickened. An earlier departure meant more time to implement my plan. Oh? Is everything okay? Nothing I can't handle, he replied with cool confidence. I've instructed Anthony to take good care of you. If you need anything at all, call me immediately. He crossed to my side of the table and tilted my chin up, his gaze intense. I'll miss that beautiful face, he murmured, brushing his thumb across my lower lip. Be good while I'm gone, Tesoro. The words carried a warning beneath their affectionate surface. I forced myself to smile. Always. Adrian kissed me deeply, possessively, before straightening to his full height. I'll call you when I land. As soon as the elevator doors closed behind him, I exhaled shakily, letting the smile drop from my face. Moving quickly, I pulled out my phone, the latest model, a gift from Adrian, that I now understood was likely monitored. I couldn't use it for anything related to my escape. I needed to buy a burner phone, withdraw cash, and figure out where to go, all while under Anthony's watchful eye. The challenge seemed insurmountable, but the alternative, staying and becoming another Sophia, was unthinkable. At precisely 10, the private elevator chimed, and Anthony stepped into the penthouse. Unlike the talkative Marco, Anthony was a man of few words, his broad shoulders and watchful eyes his most distinctive features. Good morning, Miss Hayes, he said formally. Mr. Moretti asked me to accompany you shopping today. Thank you, Anthony, I replied with a brightness I didn't feel. I just need to grab my purse, and we can go. In my bedroom, I hastily wrote Sophia's number on a slip of paper and tucked it into my wallet. I couldn't risk carrying the original note, and I couldn't trust my memory with something so crucial. The morning passed in a blur of high-end boutiques and designer showrooms. Anthony maintained a respectful distance, but never let me out of his sight, not even when I tried on dresses behind supposedly private curtains. I felt his gaze constantly, watchful and evaluating. Not lustful, but assessing, like a guard monitoring a flight risk. Which I supposed was exactly what I was. I need to use the restroom, I announced after our third store, a plan forming in my mind. Anthony nodded, escorting me to the back of the luxury department store. I'll wait right here, Miss Hayes. The women's restroom was elegant and spacious, with private stalls and a lounge area. 2 middle-aged women chatted by the sinks, barely glancing my way as I entered. I locked myself in a stall and pulled out my phone, sending a quick text to Adrian's monitored device. Found the perfect dress. Can't wait to show you when you get back. Maintaining appearances was crucial. Next, I pulled out the slip of paper with Sophia's number and stared at it, committing it to memory before flushing it down the toilet. 7 digits that might be my only lifeline. Now for the difficult part. I waited until the chatting women left, then approached one of the attendants folding fresh towels. Excuse me, I said quietly, pulling a $100 bill from my wallet. This is going to sound strange, but I desperately need to make a private phone call, and I left my phone at home. Could I possibly use yours, just for 1 minute? The woman, her name tag read Gloria, looked at the money, then at my face, hesitation clear in her expression. It's an emergency, I added, infusing my voice with urgency. Family emergency. Please. Something in my desperation must have convinced her. She glanced toward the door, then pulled a basic smartphone from her pocket. 1 minute, she agreed, taking the bill. I'll keep watch. My hands trembled as I dialed Sophia's number, praying she would answer an unknown caller. On the third ring, "Hello?" Her voice was cautious, wary. "Sophia, it's Eleanor," I whispered, turning away from the attendant. "Adrian's leaving town today. I need to get out, but I'm being watched. Can you help me?" A beat of silence, then, "Yes. Where are you now?" "Bergdorf's downtown. One of his men is with me. I know someone who works security there," she said quickly. "Third floor, men's department. Ask for Vince. Tell him you're my friend and need the package. He'll understand." "Vince, third floor," I repeated under my breath. "What then?" "Call me from the new phone once you're clear. I'll tell you where to meet me." Gloria made a subtle gesture. Time was up. "I have to go," I whispered. "Thank you." I deleted the call from the phone's history before handing it back with a grateful nod. My heart pounded as I rejoined Anthony in the hallway. "Everything okay, Miss Hayes?" he asked, his eyes scanning my face. I smiled, hoping my anxiety wasn't visible. "Perfect. Could we check out the men's department? I'd like to get Adrian a gift while I'm here." Anthony nodded, seemingly pleased by this display of devotion to his employer. We took the escalator to the third floor. The elegant men's department spread before us like a landscape of muted colors and expensive fabrics. "I'll just browse a bit," I said casually. "See if anything catches my eye." Anthony positioned himself near a column with a clear view of the entire floor, his attention never wavering from me. I pretended to examine ties and cufflinks, gradually working my way toward the back where the security office would likely be located. Near the fitting rooms, I spotted a stocky man with a security badge clipped to his belt, organizing returned merchandise. I approached slowly, waiting until Anthony was momentarily distracted by a call on his phone. "Are you Vince?" I asked quietly. The man stiffened, his eyes darting to mine. "Who's asking?" "I'm Sophia's friend," I whispered urgently. "She said you have a package for me." Recognition and wariness crossed his features simultaneously. He glanced past me toward Anthony, who was still on his phone but looking in our direction. "Wait here," Vince muttered, disappearing into a back room. He returned moments later with a small bag from the store, passing it to me with a display of customer service that wouldn't raise suspicions. "Receipts inside," he said loudly enough for anyone watching to hear. "Have a nice day, ma'am." Inside the bag was a small box containing a tie, and beneath it, a prepaid phone and $500 in cash. My breath caught in my throat. Sophia had prepared for this moment, had resources in place. How many women before me had needed this exact help? "Find anything nice?" Anthony asked as I rejoined him, the shopping bag swinging innocuously from my wrist. "A tie for Adrian," I replied, showing him the box but careful to keep the cash and phone hidden beneath. "I think he'll like it." Anthony nodded approvingly. Mr. Moretti appreciates thoughtful gestures. By late afternoon, I had accumulated enough shopping bags to satisfy appearances. "I'm getting hungry," I announced. "Could we stop somewhere for a late lunch?" "Of course, Miss Hayes. Mr. Moretti recommended the cafe at the Peninsula if that suits you. Upscale, isolated, and likely filled with people who knew Adrian, not ideal for what I needed to do next. Actually, I'm craving something simple. Maybe that sandwich place near the park? I love their outdoor seating." Anthony hesitated, clearly weighing Adrian's implicit instructions against my seemingly innocent request. "As you wish," he finally conceded. The cafe was bustling with afternoon customers, its outdoor patio offering both visibility and the noise cover I needed. I selected a table near the exit, positioned so that Anthony would have to sit with his back to the street to maintain eye contact with me. "Would you order for me?" I asked sweetly. "I need to freshen up before we eat." This time, Anthony's hesitation was more pronounced. "I'm supposed to keep you in sight, Miss Hayes." I laughed lightly. "I'm just going to the ladies' room, Anthony. It's right inside the door. Unless you'd prefer to follow me in there?" A flicker of discomfort crossed his stoic features. "No, ma'am. What would you like to eat?" "The turkey club and an iced tea would be perfect. Thank you." I walked calmly to the restroom, feeling Anthony's eyes on my back. Once inside, I moved quickly, retrieving the prepaid phone from my bag. I dialed Sophia's number with shaking fingers. "You got the package?" she answered immediately. "Yes. I don't have much time." What now? There's a bus leaving for Hartford in 40 minutes from the downtown terminal. Tickets already purchased under the name Jane Smith. From there, my cousin will meet you. He can drive you anywhere you need to go. Hartford. 4 hours away. Not far enough, but a start. How do I lose Anthony? The cafe has 2 exits, Sophia explained. The kitchen staff will let you through the back if you mention my name. My brother works there. Wait 5 minutes, then go. A sudden noise behind me made me jump. Another woman entering the restroom. I ended the call hastily, tucking the phone into my pocket. 5 minutes, I whispered to myself, checking my watch. Each second stretched like an hour as I stared at my reflection in the mirror. The diamond necklace glinted at my throat, a visible claim on me. With sudden determination, I unclasped it and shoved it deep into one of my shopping bags. If I succeeded today, Adrian would never again mark me as his property. When enough time had passed, I took a deep breath and stepped out of the restroom. Not toward Anthony waiting at our outdoor table, but deeper into the cafe. I moved quickly past bustling waitstaff toward the swinging kitchen doors, my heart hammering against my ribs. A young busboy looked up in surprise as I pushed through the entrance. "Excuse me, you can't be in here." "I need to speak to Sophia's brother." I cut in desperately. "Please, it's an emergency." Recognition flickered in his eyes. He nodded once, then gestured toward a stocky man chopping vegetables at a nearby counter. "Marco," he called. "Someone here to see you." I froze at the name, momentarily panicked until I remembered it was a common name, not just the identity of Adrian's bodyguard. The chef looked up, wiping his hands on his apron as he approached. "You're Ellie?" he asked, his accent similar to Sophia's. When I nodded, he immediately pointed toward a metal door at the back of the kitchen. "Through there, into the alley. Turn right, then take the first left. Keep walking for 3 blocks, then find a taxi. Don't stop for anything." "Thank you," I breathed. "I don't know how to repay—" "Go," he interrupted firmly. "Now, before your shadow comes looking." I slipped through the door into a narrow alley that smelled of garbage and cooking grease. Following Sophia's brother's directions, I turned right, then left at the next intersection, walking as quickly as I could without actually running. Every few seconds, I glanced over my shoulder, expecting to see Anthony's imposing figure in pursuit. 3 blocks later, breathless and trembling with adrenaline, I spotted a taxi dropping off passengers at a hotel. I dashed toward it before it could pull away, jumping into the back seat with relief. "Bus terminal, please," I instructed, sinking low in the seat. "And could you hurry? I'm late for my bus." As the taxi pulled into traffic, I finally allowed myself to breathe. I'd done it. I'd slipped Anthony's leash, at least temporarily. Now I needed to get as far from the city as possible before Adrian discovered I was gone. The downtown terminal buzzed with afternoon travelers when I arrived 15 minutes later. I kept my head down, moving purposefully toward the ticket counter where I gave the name Jane Smith. The attendant handed over a ticket without question. Sophia had indeed arranged everything. "Gate 7, she said, pointing toward the back of the terminal. "Boarding in 10 minutes. I found a seat in the waiting area, positioned so I could watch the terminal entrance while remaining partially hidden behind a pillar. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I clutched my small purse, the only thing I'd kept from my shopping expedition, and tried to calm my racing thoughts. Should I call my parents? No. They would be the first place Adrian would look. My old roommate? My former boss? Anyone I contacted would potentially be put in danger. For now, I was truly alone. The boarding announcement for Hartford came over the speakers. I stood on unsteady legs, moving toward Gate 7 with the crowd of travelers. Just a few more minutes, and I'd be... Eleanor. The voice behind me sent ice through my veins. I turned slowly, already knowing what I would see. Marco, Adrian's Marco, not Sophia's brother, stood a few feet away, his expression grim. How had he found me so quickly? Wasn't he supposed to be with Adrian on the way to Chicago? "Mr. Moretti would like to speak with you," he said quietly, nodding toward the exit where a familiar black car waited at the curb. My throat closed with fear. "I'm about to board my bus," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Marco shook his head slightly. "That's not going to happen, Miss Hayes." His hand moved subtly to rest on the bulge beneath his jacket. A gun, I realized with fresh horror. Please don't make a scene. It would be unfortunate. Not a threat against me, I understood, but against the innocent travelers surrounding us. My shoulders slumped in defeat. Whatever small chance of escape I'd had was gone. Marco took my elbow, his grip firm but not painful as he guided me toward the exit. My mind raced, searching for options, finding none. The moment we stepped outside, the car's back door opened. Adrian sat inside, his expression a mask of calm that chilled me more than any display of anger would have. He wore the same suit from this morning, not a wrinkle in sight. Had he ever actually intended to go to Chicago? Get in, Eleanor, he said softly. I had no choice. Marco released my arm, and I slid into the seat beside Adrian, my body wooden with fear. The door closed behind me with the finality of a prison cell. For several long moments, Adrian simply looked at me, his dark eyes unreadable. The silence stretched between us, oppressive and suffocating. You've disappointed me, he finally said, his voice measured and controlled. After everything I've given you, everything I've done for you. Adrian, I can explain. No need. He held up a hand, silencing me instantly. Anthony told me about your trip to the men's department, about your mysterious bathroom visits. Did you think I wouldn't have him report your every move? My breath caught in my throat. He knew everything. Every step I'd taken had been watched, catalogued, reported. And then Sophia's involvement. He shook his head slightly, disappointment etched in his features. That was particularly unfortunate. Alarm shot through me. What did you do to her? A cold smile touched his lips. Nothing yet. Her condition protects her, temporarily. My child deserves to be born healthy after all. The casual threat made my blood run cold. Please don't hurt her. This was my decision, not hers. Was it? Adrian's voice hardened. Or did she poison you against me with her lies? Did she tell you how I discarded her when she became inconvenient? His laugh held no humor. My dear, naive Eleanor. Did you ever wonder what made her so inconvenient? I remained silent, fear closing my throat. Sophia wasn't just my wife, Adrian continued, his tone conversational as the car pulled smoothly into traffic. She was my partner in every sense. She handled certain financial aspects of my business. And then I discovered she had been embezzling from me for over a year. His eyes darkened with remembered rage. Over $12 million siphoned to offshore accounts. Did she mention that part of our history? I shook my head numbly, uncertain what to believe. She fled when I confronted her, only to discover she couldn't access the money without certain codes. His smile was terrible to behold. Codes she never managed to obtain. Now she works as a waitress, plays the victim, and carries my child, a child she tried to hide from me until one of my associates spotted her condition. Each word landed like a physical blow. Had Sophia manipulated me? Used me as a pawn in some ongoing war with Adrian? Or was this another of his calculated lies? I don't know what to believe anymore, I whispered truthfully. Adrian's expression softened marginally. He reached out to touch my face, his fingertips gentle against my cheek. I couldn't help flinching away. That's the problem, isn't it, Tesoro? He murmured. You don't know who to trust, so let me make it simple for you. His hand moved to my throat, not squeezing but resting there. A reminder of how easily he could hurt me if he chose. Trust that I will always find you. Trust that there is nowhere you can go that I won't follow. Trust that what's mine stays mine. Tears welled in my eyes, spilling over despite my efforts to contain them. What are you going to do to me? Adrian wiped a tear from my cheek with his thumb, his touch almost tender. Nothing you won't eventually thank me for, he promised, his voice low and intimate. We're going away for a while, you and I. Somewhere quiet where you can adjust your perspective. You're kidnapping me, I said, the reality of my situation crashing down with crushing weight. I'm protecting what belongs to me, he corrected, as if the distinction mattered. In time, you'll understand. The car turned onto a private airstrip where a sleek jet waited, its engines already running. Marco opened the car door, standing at attention as Adrian gestured for me to exit first. Where are we going? I asked, my voice barely audible over the roar of the engines. Adrian placed his hand at the small of my back, guiding me toward the waiting plane. "Home, Eleanor," he said simply. "I'm taking you home." As we boarded the jet, I gazed back at the city skyline one last time. Somewhere in those glittering towers was the life I'd once had. Ordinary, struggling, but free. A life I might never see again. Adrian took my hand, his grip firm and unyielding as he led me to a plush leather seat. "You'll thank me one day," he promised, his dark eyes holding mine, "when you understand what love truly means." Not love, I thought numbly as the jet began to taxi down the runway. Possession, obsession. A cage with golden bars, but a cage nonetheless. As we lifted into the clouds, I wondered if Sophia was watching the skies, waiting for a call that would never come. I wondered if anyone would even notice I was gone. 3 months passed like a dream, or perhaps a nightmare. Adrian's home turned out to be a sprawling estate on a private island off the coast of Greece. Azure waters stretched to the horizon in every direction, beautiful and impenetrable. My gilded prison. The staff, all Adrian's people, all watching, always, treated me with careful deference. I had every luxury imaginable except the one thing I truly wanted. Freedom. My phone, passport, and identification remained in Adrian's possession. The boats and helicopter that occasionally arrived were strictly controlled. The satellite internet was monitored, accessible only through devices Adrian provided. For the first month, I raged, plotting escape attempts that never materialized, refusing Adrian's company whenever possible. He responded with implacable patience, as if my resistance were merely an unfortunate phase he knew would pass. "You can't keep me here forever," I'd spat during one particularly heated confrontation. "Not forever," he'd agreed calmly. "Just until you understand." Understand what? He never specified. That I belonged to him? That resistance was futile? That this twisted version of devotion was the closest thing to love someone like Adrian Moretti could offer? By the second month, rage had given way to a hollow resignation. I stopped fighting, started going through the motions. I swam in the infinity pool overlooking the sea, read books from the extensive library, ate meals prepared by the personal chef. I even allowed Adrian back into my bed, my body responding to his touch even as my mind remained detached, observing from a distance. He mistook compliance for acceptance, my silence for surrender. His grip loosened slightly, the constant surveillance became more subtle. I was allowed to wander the grounds unaccompanied, though I knew the security systems tracked my every move. It was during one such solitary walk along the cliffs that I first noticed the sailboat on the horizon. Too small to be one of Adrian's vessels, too persistent to be a casual passing craft. Day after day it appeared, always maintaining the same distance, as if watching, waiting. Hope, that dangerous emotion I'd nearly extinguished, flickered to life again. Today marked exactly 3 months since my failed escape. Adrian had been called away to handle some business emergency on the mainland, the first time he'd left the island since our arrival. His absence created a fragile bubble of freedom, temporary but precious. I stood on the terrace outside our bedroom. No, his bedroom. I would never truly consider any part of this place mine, watching the sun sink toward the horizon in a blaze of orange and pink. The sailboat had appeared again, closer this time. Close enough that I could make out a figure on deck, though not clearly enough to identify features. The satellite phone in my pocket, stolen from Adrian's office during his hurried departure that morning, felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I'd memorized only one number during my brief taste of freedom 3 months ago. I could only pray it still worked. Glancing over my shoulder to ensure I was truly alone, I dialed quickly. 1 ring, 2, 3. "Hello?" A woman's voice, cautious but familiar. "Sophia," I breathed, relief washing over me. "It's Eleanor." Silence for a heartbeat, then, "Eleanor? My God, are you all right? Where are you?" "Greece, a private island." I kept my voice low, though Adrian's remaining security staff were stationed at the main house, far from the master suite. "Adrian's gone to the mainland until tomorrow. There's a sailboat that keeps circling the island. Is it—" "Yes," she cut in urgently. "My brother. We've been searching for months. Adrian covered his tracks well, but we finally traced one of his shell companies to property in the Mediterranean." Hope surged through me, so powerful it made me dizzy. "How Listen carefully, Sophia interrupted. Marco will explain when he reaches you, but you need to be ready to move quickly. Pack nothing. Head to the North Cove, the small beach below the cliffs. He'll approach after midnight when the tide is right. The security systems have a 3-minute reset at exactly 2 a.m. That's your window. My heart raced. How do you know about the security reset? Because I helped design it, she replied grimly. Before Adrian decided I knew too much. The pieces clicked into place, her knowledge of Adrian's operations. The embezzlement he'd accused her of. The money, I whispered. Did you really steal from him? A bitter laugh. I called it an insurance policy. $12 million. Compensation for 5 years of helping him build his empire while turning a blind eye to how he earned his fortune. Her voice hardened. Every cent laundered through my accounts, my name on papers that could send me to prison for decades. When I got pregnant and wanted out, he made it clear there was only one way to leave his organization, in a body bag. The unspoken words hung between us. What about your baby? I asked, remembering her heavily pregnant form from that night at the restaurant. Lucia is 3 weeks old, Sophia said, her voice softening. Beautiful and healthy, and the reason I'm not on that boat myself. I couldn't risk leaving her, but Marco knows what to do. A sound from inside the house made me stiffen. I have to go, I whispered. North Cove, 2 a.m. Eleanor? Sophia said quickly. Be careful. If he catches you trying to escape again. She didn't need to finish. We both knew what Adrian was capable of. I disconnected, slipping the phone back into my pocket, just as Maria, one of the housekeepers, appeared at the terrace doorway. Dinner is served, Miss Hayes, she announced, her eyes carefully averted from my face. Did she know what her employer truly was? Did any of them? Thank you, Maria. I'll be right down. The hours crawled by with excruciating slowness. I forced myself to eat, to make casual conversation with the house staff, to appear completely normal. Inside, my thoughts raced in frantic circles. Would tonight be my salvation or my doom? At midnight, I retired to the master suite, claiming a headache. No one questioned me. Adrian's absence always cast a pall of uncertainty over the household routine. I changed into dark clothes and sturdy shoes, then lay fully dressed on top of the covers, watching the minutes tick by on the bedside clock. At 1:30 a.m., I slipped out of bed and crept to the terrace. The night was clear, stars scattered across the velvet sky like diamonds. No moon, a small mercy that would make my journey to the North Cove less visible. The house remained quiet, security lights illuminating the manicured grounds. I took a deep breath and began my descent from the terrace, using the latticed trellis that climbed the villa's walls. Adrian had never restricted my movements enough to make such precautions necessary before, a mistake born of his growing complacency, his belief that he had broken my spirit. My feet touched the soft grass, and I pressed myself against the wall, listening intently. Nothing but the gentle lapping of waves against the shore and the distant chirp of insects. I began moving slowly toward the northern edge of the property, keeping to the shadows, freezing at every unexpected sound. The path to the North Cove required crossing an exposed section of lawn, then navigating a steep, rocky trail down to the beach. I counted security cameras as I went, mapping their blind spots from memory. Adrian had proudly shown me the security system once, another display of power masquerading as transparency. So you understand why trying to leave would be foolish, he'd explained with that indulgent smile. At the edge of the lawn, I paused, checking my watch. 1:52 a.m. I needed to time my dash across the open space precisely if I wanted to avoid detection. At 1:58, I took a deep breath and ran. Keeping low, my heart pounding so loudly I was certain it would give me away. I reached the trailhead and ducked behind a large boulder, just as a security guard rounded the corner of the house, his flashlight sweeping the grounds in a routine check. I held my breath, counting seconds in my head. The guard paused, his light lingering near my hiding place. Had he seen something? Heard my footsteps? After an eternity, he continued his rounds, disappearing back toward the main house. I exhaled shakily, checking my watch again. 2:01, 1 minute until the security reset. The trail down to the cove was treacherous in daylight. In near total darkness, it was a nightmare. I picked my way carefully, using my hands as much as my feet, ignoring the sting of cuts from sharp rocks. Every second that passed was one closer to freedom, but also one closer to potential discovery. At precisely 2 a.m., I made my move, half climbing, half sliding down the steepest part of the path during the brief window when the cameras would be blind. I landed on the soft sand of the small cove with a muffled thud, the taste of salt and freedom on my lips. The beach was empty, the water a vast expanse of darkness. Where was the sailboat? Had something gone wrong? Panic clawed at my throat as I scanned the horizon. Then I saw it. A small dinghy emerging from the shadows, its oars making barely a whisper against the water. A man's silhouette, broad-shouldered and powerful, guided it toward shore. Marco. Not Adrian's Marco, but Sophia's brother. He pulled the small boat onto the sand, his features becoming clearer as he approached. The family resemblance to Sophia was unmistakable. "Eleanor?" he whispered. I nodded, suddenly unable to speak past the lump in my throat. "We need to move quickly," he said, gesturing toward the dinghy. "The sailboat is anchored beyond the security perimeter. Once we reach it, we'll make for the mainland." I stepped toward him, toward freedom, when a familiar voice froze me in place. "I must say, I'm disappointed, Tesoro. Again." Adrian emerged from the shadows of the cliff face. Marco, his Marco, and another guard flanking him. How long had he been there, watching me, testing me? Had he ever truly left the island at all? "Did you really think I wouldn't anticipate this?" Adrian asked, his voice almost gentle as he stepped onto the beach. "That I wouldn't recognize the sailboat that's been circling my island for weeks? That I wouldn't have the satellite phone track the moment you used it?" Sophia's brother moved protectively in front of me, but Adrian merely smiled, gesturing to his men. Both drew their weapons. "Please don't make this messier than it needs to be," Adrian said, his eyes never leaving my face. "You've forced my hand, Eleanor. I wanted to trust you. I wanted us to build something together." Genuine regret colored his voice. "Now I see that's impossible, at least for the moment." "Let her go, Moretti," Sophia's brother growled. "You can't keep her prisoner forever." Adrian's smile didn't waver. "I don't intend to." He extended his hand toward me. "Come, Eleanor. We're leaving. Now." I looked from his outstretched hand to the dinghy, to the armed men, to the vast, dark sea. There was no escape. Not tonight. Perhaps not ever. But as I took a step toward Adrian, a blinding light suddenly illuminated the beach. The unmistakable chop of helicopter blades shattered the night's silence. "Police! Don't move!" Voices shouted in Greek and English, figures rappelling from the helicopter onto the beach. Adrian's men raised their weapons, but were immediately overwhelmed. In the chaos, Sophia's brother grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the dinghy. "Now!" he shouted over the deafening noise. "This is our only chance." As we pushed the small boat into the water, I caught a final glimpse of Adrian, his face contorted with rage as officers forced him to his knees. Our eyes met across the beach, his promise clear even in defeat. This isn't over, but for now at least, it was. The dinghy cut through the waves, carrying me toward the waiting sailboat, toward freedom, toward whatever uncertain future lay beyond Adrian Moretti's possessive grasp. I didn't look back again.